Rabbi Kin. Tonight we're going to cover a very important and special topic, which I believe every one of us can gain a lot from. I gave the topic of tonight the following title, which some of you perhaps have heard: "The eyes are the windows to the soul." From the title alone, however, you may not be able to figure out what I'm going to talk about. So there's a little bit of a surprise. But there is, of course, a lot of truth to that saying. I have a hobby, even though these days I don't have too much time for this hobby, but I very much enjoyed astronomy, and I purchased a very powerful telescope. And by using this telescope, I would be able to see the rings of Saturn, to admire the planets, the beauty, and even for terrestrial objects, I would be able to use this telescope to see at great distances, whether it's mountains or city. But as much as I like that instrument, I would have preferred to have an instrument that can be a telescope into the human soul, to be able to peer inside, to see his pain or his happiness, and to be able to figure out what exactly does he need, in what way I could be of help to him. So with a powerful telescope that can somehow peer into the soul, perhaps we would be able to gain a better understanding of the human being. In reality, we already have such a telescope. It's the eyes. The eyes provide lots of information about the emotional state of a human being. You can see sadness and happiness in the eyes. And you may not have realized this, but you can also see love. True love, you can see in the eyes. And you know what? When you see that pure love, no words are necessary. You can see it without exchanging any words. Even if you're an outsider and you see two individuals who really like each other, you can see it in their eyes. And you know what you will notice? That the pupils are enlarged. It is a sign that something is being stimulated there. There's some excitement there. And you can tell that by looking at their eyes. You can also tell a true smile from a fake smile. You know how? Look at the eyes. And the reason for that is because the mouth shape of a smile is easy to fake. When people smile out of politeness, that's not a real smile. And the way to figure it out is look at the eyes. The eyes will give it away if the smile is forced, fake, or real. However, the eyes serve another purpose. Besides being able to see and to appreciate everything around us, the eyes can also be the key to a happy life. I think the one that best expresses this is a Roman emperor whom you may not have heard of, but he's quite famous, Marcus Aurelius. So let me quote to you what he said. He was a great thinker and philosopher. He says as follows: "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." So he said it's in the way of thinking. I would like to add that it's also in the way you see life and in the way you interpret what you see. This is key to happiness. How we see things, how we think about them, how we interpret them. Because, for example, unhappiness and frustration does not only stem from not having what we want. Things didn't work out for us the way we wanted. It really stems from a sense of losing control. We sense that we have no control over the situation. We're very unhappy about it. But Marcus Aurelius adds another very important idea. You have the power over your mind, not outside events. What happens in the outside, what happens to us from other people, you have no control over that. You have power over your mind. Realize this and you will find strength. So what exactly is he saying? A very important idea. That you can't change the reality. What can you change? Your outlook. The way you see things. The way you interpret them. Another philosopher, more recent philosopher, said the following. His name was Nikos Kazantzakis. Since we can't change reality, let us change the eyes that see the reality. It's in the eyes, how we see things. However, the eyes, being windows of the soul, are not just mirrors reflecting what's in the soul. People forget another very important idea that is within the eyes, within the ability of the eye, and that is that the eyes absorb. They do not only reflect the soul, what's going on deep in the soul, but they also are very impressionable. Eyes are extremely sensitive to light, sensitive to what they see. They absorb a lot of information, a lot of detail, much more than we even know. The eyes are so powerful that they absorb information that can actually affect the soul. Here we're saying that the eyes reflect or are windows into what's going on in the soul. The eyes can also affect the soul, depending on what it sees, what it absorbs. Based on this, no wonder that the Torah, the Bible, Hashem, God, instructs us, warns us, "Lo taturu achre levavchem ve'achre einechem." Be careful. Don't allow your heart to wander, to just covet everything it sees. Don't let your eyes stray. Why? These two, the heart and the eyes, are the agents of sin. And there's a famous question, why does it first say the heart and then the eye? It usually works the other way around. We see something and then we covet. Then why does the Torah put in order that one should not go after what his heart desires and then after what his eyes see? And the answer is because the heart is curious. If the heart would not be curious, it would not let the eyes wander off. And you know what they say in English? There's a saying, curiosity killed the cat. Mm-hmm. It's the curiosity where everything begins. Don't be so curious. And you'll be able to have better control over your eyes. Because what happens with these two agents of sin? When one sees certain things that he would like to have, and he can't get his hands on them, it leads to jealousy, it breeds hatred, and worse, it could lead to violence. What's interesting about the eyes nowadays in our generation is that they have been able to cure vision. They have been able to restore our vision almost 20/20 through LASIK. They've succeeded to remove cataracts. In 15 minutes, you can have your cataracts removed. It's easy. It's done almost every day, many times a day. In thinking about this great advancement in restoration of vision, I was thinking, well, why don't they correct vision in such a way where they can provide us, where they can give the individual a positive eye, an eye that only sees the positive and not the negative. Here we're restoring the physical vision, but what about the vision of seeing things in the right light? Why not work on that? Why not make greater efforts to help people see properly, not just physically? It's a good question, no? I haven't seen anybody talk about it. No one write about it. Why doesn't that interest them? Isn't that something important, worthwhile our efforts and our money? You'll be surprised by the answer. Part of the answer lies in the contradiction between advancement in technology, on the one hand, and the regression of values and morals, on the other hand. Because we actually see tremendous advancement. Man has reached the moon. He's reached Mars. He's reached planets that are even farther. Not he himself, but his machines. There's tremendous advancement in technology these days. There's no denial about that. And you know what? It's impressive. In many ways, it's useful. We're thankful for it. So there's advancement in this particular area. But there is regression in the area of values and morals. We still have war. We have terrorism. We have crime, murder, infidelity. What happened to that area? Why isn't there advancement in perfecting that, in improving relationships? What we see is more and more divorce. The world is regressing, not advancing, not progressing when it comes to morals and values. So what's going on? This contradiction is somewhat the answer of why there's not enough effort being applied to enable the human being to see life in a proper way. I'm going to give you 3 answers as to why people somehow prefer to enjoy and to emphasize technology and the like, including all the gadgets that they rush to buy as soon as they come out, versus making a greater effort in improving family ties, human relationships. 3 answers, 3 explanations for why is there such a contradiction or such a difference between the two. The short answer is what another philosopher said, Henry Bergson. The eye sees only what mind is prepared to comprehend. So listen carefully to that. Very deep idea, which of course is very, very true, that the eye sees only what the mind is prepared to comprehend. In other words, what the mind is not prepared, in other words, not willing to comprehend, it will be blind. It will ignore. I'll give you an example. There is really ample evidence that there's a creator to the world. Really. A lot of philosophers have reached that conclusion. A lot of people have experienced something in their life that tells them that there is a creator. There's all kinds of evidence, and with technology today, we can actually see more and more of that evidence firsthand with the powerful tools that we have. How come some scientists, some individual, great thinkers, have no problem with seeing all that evidence, and others deny that there's any evidence or not sufficient evidence? They're not convinced. Because the mind is not prepared to accept that conclusion, that there is a God. Very simple. It's really, really very, very simple. I'm going to add a little side note to this. You may hear from time to time the argument that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. In other words, you want to convince me? You have to satisfy me with extraordinary evidence, which I don't have. Well, what is my reply to that? I have various, of course, ways of dealing with that. But remember, in the same way that they demand extraordinary evidence for extraordinary claims that there is a God, I say extraordinary testimony, which the Jewish people have, requires extraordinary refutation to claim that what they've been saying all along is a lie. Go ahead, try to prove that what they said and what they testify to, all these people, all these generations, is a lie. Everything that the Torah says we put into our tefillin, in the hand and on the head. We put it on the mezuzah. We celebrate various holidays in remembrance of what happened in the past. All of that is a lie. All of that was made up. It's a myth. You need extraordinary refutations to do away with that somehow it just happened by some committee. 613 commandments are not going to be accepted so easily by a stubborn people unless they witnessed it. It's all in the mind. The minds of many people are not prepared to accept what is quite evident to others. So what does this amount to? It amounts to preferences and biases. That's what it amounts to. People have certain preferences and are biased, and therefore they will pick and choose what they want to believe, where they want to spend their money, and how they want to conduct themselves in life. Number 2, people don't see deeply enough. They don't investigate thoroughly. When they look into something, it's very superficial. I'll give you an example. You can have 2 people looking at the same individual. One will say, he's ugly, I don't like him. And the other one will say, no, he's beautiful, I like him. How could the 2 have different opinions about what they're looking at? You know, there's another saying in English, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. But we're not even talking about beauty over here. We're talking about the fact that this individual who's looking at another individual may not have really investigated, may not have really looked into him. He's looking at the outside, and appearances can be deceiving. Remember what the rabbis tell us. Al tistakel bakankan, ela b'ma sheyesh bo. Don't look at the jar from the outside, look at its contents. You may have somebody that is not so appealing, but he's so special on the inside. Get to know him or her. Don't be misled by what you see from the outside. Investigate, do your homework. Most people don't do their homework. They briefly and superficially, in a very shallow way, investigate others. Yeah. Whether this is another human being that they're looking into, or a religion. Look into it. Make it your business if it's really that important to you. Well, maybe it's not important to you. You want to marry someone? Get to know them as much as you can. Obviously, you can't just date them forever, and you will never get to know them 100% until you marry them and deal with them, with the challenges of life. But do your best. Don't you want to know your best? I mean, don't you want to have the best information? Do your best. Ask people. Investigate. So there is a lack of proper investigation. The world is very good at investigating why a plane crashed. They send out teams of professionals who are very experienced, and they'll be able to narrow down most of the time what the reason for the crash is. They're becoming better and better, more experienced. Unfortunately, too many crashes, but those crashes in the past help figure out, what the problems could be. And as a result of our learning, we prevent. More accidents are avoided as a result of that. And aviation has become safer. Why are you investigating plane crashes and not the crash of a family? The crash of a marriage? Why isn't enough work being done in that area? Isn't that more important? Human beings are not more important than machines. You see what's going on? And this has been the trend throughout history. It's not something new. Just that today there's a greater decadence all over the world. And I'll get into that next. But the problem is people are for some reason just not choosing to invest their time and effort in what really deserves their attention. Human relationships, the soul. Number 3, another explanation as to why people are somewhat more concerned with technology and what's going on in the world at large instead of in relationships instead of their own personal problems and weaknesses, is as follows. You all probably heard of something called global warming. Now, global warming appears to be a problem, even though there's different opinions as to what exactly is the problem, if it's a true problem, to what extent it's a problem, what is causing it. But the temperature is rising. Okay, temperature is rising, and this could have an effect, a negative effect on life. It may. Not everybody agrees, again, with everything that is being said about global warming, but at least it is something that we can see. It's something that has been documented. It exists. But there's something more dangerous than global warming that everybody is in agreement, and that is how the environment has become poisoned. Now, when we talk about the poisoning of the environment, what comes to mind is, if you recall from the past, there was a lot of talk about secondhand smoke. Even secondhand smoke can affect you, can hurt you. Remember? In the same way that secondhand smoke was an issue, so was smog, especially in the past. If you remember Los Angeles in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, you could see the smog. There were many smoggy days. Today, the cars have become better. Even though there's more cars, there's not as much smog. And people, of course, in the past suffered as a result of the smog. It is detrimental to one's health, no doubt about it. But guess what? The government, the state, everybody came out against it. They forced the car companies to improve the cars, and they succeeded. Cars are made better these days. Now we have electric cars, that's even better. So again, we're back to square one. You're investing in the cars, you're trying to solve this type of contamination. There's another kind of contamination that is a lot more problematic, the contamination of people's minds. What people see, their eyes are being contaminated. By what? By the content in the media. Why now more than ever? Very simple. Today, a lot of children spend 8 hours a day, they say, studies have been made, on TV and on the internet. Children and adults are being negatively affected by the content of the media. Media is a powerful tool. If it's used in the right way, it could be very beneficial. But it could be very damaging. Why? Again, it's the eyes. The eyes are the windows through which all this information, this bad information, is going through and affecting the souls of people. This is what I call the real environmental poisoning. The poisoning of the minds, much more than of the lungs. What are they seeing? What's the content? More and more pornography. You think you had pornography 20 years ago? Now you have more. You can look at the studies, the percentage of movies that have this kind of bad content. How much of the movie is pornography? It's getting more and more. And people are being exposed to all of this, and it's affecting them. So who are the real victims today? The victims, not so much the lungs, the eyes. That's the way I see it. The eyes are the greatest victims. And of course, if the eyes are the victims, the mind is a victim too. And now they're thinking about legalizing drugs, or at least some drugs, even though they have their justifications for it. It's not healthy. You know what that does to the mind? In the long run, at least, long-term effects, it's detrimental. It's not too good. People who have, of course, pain, it's a different situation. But why would somebody want that to begin with if he doesn't have pain? It's an escape from reality. But don't you see the long-term effects? No, I don't see long-term. I only think of short-term. Their vision is very narrow. Ezu chacham haro'eh et hanolad, the rabbis tell us. Who is wise? One who sees in the long run, far out. What's the worst case scenario? What could this lead to? But it happens with stocks too. Some people just jump into it. They're risk takers. But how could you take a risk with your life, with your soul, with your children? It's again, priorities. Very narrow vision. Take a look at another example. You have a lot of women who spend a lot of money on plastic surgery. They want to look good. Nose job. Okay. But why not spend that money in your kids' education? They don't want to spend a penny. They want free schooling. And if you want free schooling, sometimes the child ends up in a school that is not so good. The kids are not the best from the best homes. Why aren't you concerned about them getting the best possible education with good values? Maybe because you don't have them either. That's the only explanation I see. If the values are more in the latest car, plastic surgery, vacations on cruises and the like, that's what they like, that's what they enjoy, that's what they want. This is what the world is getting to. So the kids suffer. And then the parents complain, my kid is disrespectful of me. It's your fault. It began somewhere. Perhaps you were disrespectful to your own parents, and the kids saw that too. So these are all scenarios of problem areas. So what's the answer? Why do these things happen? Perhaps a short answer would be the food business. You can see what's going on in the food business and their approach and their strategy in selling food. You think they care about your health? Junk food. Why is there so much junk food? You know what I call junk food? Fake food. It's fake. Maybe in a nice wrapper, but it's fake. Mm-hmm. Fake food made by fake people. Yeah?
It's true.
They want to make money. They're not interested in your health. So you see from the strategy in the food industry, you can get a glimpse, a little bit of an idea of what's going on in the world. Look at these people. They have a lot of money. They have power, they have some control and influence, and they're willing to spend millions of dollars on advertising because they know advertisements will have an effect. You will see with your eyes and you will be impressed. Especially if you see a movie star sitting on top of the car or selling you this soap or shampoo. It's a movie star that you hopefully will look up to, and if she or he can buy it and use it, then it must be good. And it must be worth the $50, even though it's not worth even $1. And people are fooled, misled, easily, blind. How could it happen? I mean, where's their intelligence? They don't investigate. They don't realize that they're being fooled. And you know what? There's a lot of people in the big industries that actually make fun of their clients. People are just not smart. They'll buy anything. And they're right. But how do you take advantage of their innocence? So what's the answer to that? The answer to that is that these people who are making the money have become completely immune to feelings of loyalty and affection. Loyalty and affection was something so special, so important in the past. It doesn't mean anything these days, or not as much. Not to those who are trying to make money. Loyalty, affection, that you care for someone? No. They have become immune. How does somebody become immune? Because of what they observe, what they see in society these days. It's addictive. They see that the government doesn't care. The government doesn't fight them, doesn't put up a fight. Freedom of speech, this is a democracy. Do whatever you want even though it hurts other people. No controls, no limits. Oh, some limits, yeah. Make sure you put on a label that some studies have shown that this can cause cancer. That's fine. As long as you put that label, it's okay. Then you can sell the poison and charge almost anything you want for it. Just put the label. Don't forget the label. Isn't this hypocrisy? Fake. So what we have here is a lack of vision. And the lack of vision is not realizing how much damage this is eventually going to do. Maybe you don't see it now, but this is going to cause tremendous damage. People only after having seen x-rays of their lungs, black as coal, after many years of smoking, did they realize then that this is dangerous to one's health. You think you can restore those lungs? It's very difficult. So in the same way that people do not think enough, do not realize that long term that this is going to damage them, damage their families and their children, this is how they go about living their lives, not paying attention to all kinds of dangers that lurk on the outside. There's all kinds of dangers. They don't study about them. They don't care so much about them. Immediate gratification. That is the motto these days. So, again, the victim, the eye, the mind, and as a result of the eyes and the mind being contaminated, we have marriages that are suffering, parents and children not getting along. So how are we going to be able to fix this? I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Marshall Islands or with the Bikini Atoll in the Pacific Ocean, far away from here. There were many, many nuclear explosions, atomic bombs, hydrogen bombs, in the air, in the ground, under the sea, for many years, until I think it was 1958, when it stopped. Some of those bombs were very, very powerful and scattered radiation to great distances. We're talking about radioactive material, very dangerous to one's health. People died. People have symptoms of that radiation till this day. Even though the people who lived in those islands were removed in time, eventually when they came back, they realized that it was not safe. You couldn't grow anything there. Everything was contaminated, the water, the ground. But what I'd like to point out is something else. Even the scientists back then who were experimenting, of course, during the Cold War era with all kinds of powerful bombs, even they didn't realize how much damage it was done. There was one bomb that took them completely by surprise, how powerful it was. But forget the power. Do you know how long that contamination is going to last there? For a long, long time. You can't just fix it easily. Look at what's going on in Chernobyl, if you remember that from the 1980s. Big radius around that place is off limits. Nobody lives there. Many people became sick, even at great distances from Chernobyl. And there are other places in the world too that are contaminated because of mining, because of stockpiling radioactive material, all kinds of reasons. You can't live there. The damage has been done. It's very difficult to undo. So here too, there's a certain level of contamination that has unfortunately permeated many, many homes, many people. Their mind is contaminated, and therefore their value system is off. Their priorities are wrong. How do you retrain them? How do you re-educate them? The older a person becomes, you know what they say, I think in English, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, something like that. He's an old dog. A new puppy, maybe. Mm-hmm. People have gotten used to doing what they're doing. They're set in their ways. Why change? Especially if that change requires effort. Why become a better person? You know, go over to an average individual in Congress even. You know, I think it would be a great idea for you to work on your arrogance. I don't think he'll like that, by the way. You know, learn to be a little bit humbler. And he's a very charismatic senator or congressman, whatever. and he has a good chance of re-election, he doesn't see any incentive on working, on refining his character. Why should I? What am I going to gain from it? You're going to give me a better job? What's there in for me by refining a character? It takes a lot of work. Even a diet is not easy. Physical diet. What about a spiritual diet? When we work on our character to become better people, people are not interested in that. In Judaism, there's a big emphasis on that. We learn about that every day for those who learn. Musar, books on ethics, how to be a better person, a better father, a better husband. This is an important part of our life. Avodah al hamidot, working on one's nature, on one's character, because we're not perfect. We're born, we are raw. And part of life's mission is to refine ourselves, to become better people. People go to college and they get a degree, even a PhD, on some profession, some subject that they want to specialize in. What about on themselves, on becoming a better person? You'll have professors who are very intelligent, but they're drunk. Mm. At night, at home, away from class, drunk. And some of them even abusing their spouse.
Beating the wife.
Of course. And some of them committing other terrible things. But they're smart, intelligent. Why? Why in this area are you so good? You know your stuff. You're an expert. You've gotten even the Nobel Prize for something that you discovered in chemistry or whatever. What about refining your character? Discover yourself. No interest. The mind is not being trained these days. It's not being taught by the media, for sure not, to do that. So where is he going to pick it up? For us, it's part of our tradition, part of our training. And even then, how many make that effort? Even though they have the education, they have the training, we're taught about the importance of becoming better people. The Torah tells us this is what you need to strive for. Vatem tiyuli mamlechet kohanim begoy kadosh. You should be a priestly nation to me, a nation that is holy. Discipline yourself, control yourself. Don't just try to get your hands on everything your eyes see. Our literature, whether it's the Talmud, the Zohar, the Midrash, the Torah, is full of examples of how there were righteous individuals, humble people, good people. There were those who failed, of course. But at least we have resources that point the direction. Not everybody wants to adopt that direction. So what we see today is a society that is contaminated with fake values, not real good values. So what's going to be the solution? Is there anything that we can do about it? How can we correct the problem here? What is missing exactly? I mentioned the fact that the vision is lacking in clarity. People are not clearly seeing the true reality of what's really important in life. It all begins with one's children. For an adult to change, it may be a little bit difficult, but we can hopefully be a good influence over our children by making sure that at least they get a fair chance at life. If you remember reading in the Torah, in the parasha recently, where we have instructions on how to make the Mishkan, the tabernacle. We have instructions on how to make the kelim, the many vessels. And you will notice how a lot of them are made out of gold. But the halacha is, the ruling is that if you don't have the gold, you can make them out of silver, you can make them out of copper too. There's only one item that has to be made out of gold. No compromises. The keruvim. The keruvim is that piece of gold that was on top of the ark that had the shape of two children with wings. Remember? They looked like angels facing each other. That has to be gold, pure gold. Why? Because of what it represents. These are the children Children are pure. Don't let them become contaminated. While they're still pure, while they're still children, give them the best education. For Jews, this is very, very important. Exceedingly important. Because they spend more time in school than they spend at home. Their teachers will be like parents. And what is that teacher going to impart in the child? Hopefully, if he's a good person, good values. They don't want to spend the money. Many people don't want to spend the money. Private education is expensive. I realize that. But where are you spending your money? More effort has to go into making sure that the children get a fair chance, that they stay pure, and that their eyes are not contaminated by all this junk in the media that is damaging people, damaging relationships. The Keruvim therefore represents children. The purity in children, it has to stay pure gold. You cannot make it of another material. It also represents love. The love that we are supposed to have for Hashem, for God. It has to be pure, it has to be sincere. The only way that can remain so, pure gold, is with the following. Number one, a person always has to be prepared and willing to make changes. Listen, you made a mistake, make a change. And as you're about to make the change, by the way, don't forget to admit to others your mistake. Don't hide. A lot of people are being caught today for something that they did that is very, very not nice. You hear them in the media every other day about somebody else that was caught doing something very, very not nice. It could be an important person. It could be someone not so important. It could be someone in sports. People are caught all the time. Most of them, I think, when they're actually faced with what they did, will deny it. I didn't do it. They're making up a story. Or it was by consent. All kinds of excuses to get away from the shame, from the guilt. Not to admit a wrong. Just admit it. If it was a mistake on your part, we're not perfect. The human being is frail. He is. He's susceptible to all kinds of influences. People can fall as a result of seeing things they shouldn't be seeing. And because of that, their mind becomes contaminated, and then their soul becomes contaminated too. And they will want the wrong things. And they may go to great lengths to get what they want, even if it's illegal. All right, fine. You made a mistake. People have made mistakes. Admit it and make a U-turn. Be prepared to make a change in your life. What's wrong with that? We make changes to our kitchen. We remodel. We want a better car. A new sofa after many years. What's wrong? That's okay. It's acceptable. What about yourself? You made mistakes. You've grown. You've learned from your past mistakes. You realize today things that you didn't know in the past. You've matured. Well, that's part of maturity, is admitting one's mistakes from the past. For a mature relationship to grow and to be continuously strong, the two have to be willing to communicate to each other and admit their mistakes and their wrongs and be willing to make changes. No, it's her fault. It's always her fault. Maybe sometimes it's your fault. Well, maybe once in a while. It's just part of human nature that not everyone is easily convinced that it's his fault, and they don't easily want to make changes. And some of these changes are not difficult to make. Say, I'm sorry. Forget your ego. And that will go a long way as long as you're sincere. Get some help, maybe, with anger management. Do whatever it takes, but show that you care about the relationship. Didn't you promise her when you got married, by giving her a diamond ring, that you are mine's forever? Why give a diamond ring? Because diamonds are forever. So should their relationship be forever. So wasn't that your commitment and your promise to her? So things happen, yes. There's tension, there's pressures, but don't forget your commitment. No, today, commitment? What's that? Commitment is something too difficult for people to undertake. So number one, there needs to be a willingness to change. Be prepared to admit your mistakes. And number three, strive to be truthful. I assure you that if someone strives to be truthful, a word is a word, a promise is always kept, he's always going after the truth, he will find the truth. He will have a better idea, he will have greater clarity of what to do in life, what's important, what's not. If he does not pursue the truth, he's not a truthful person, and he chooses to remain fake, then of course, he will be fed fake news. He will be cheated by the same environment that he is helping create by not being truthful. This is the way you are to others, and others will be the same way to you. You cheat others, you are fake with others, others will be fake with you. You're a good man, you're a truthful man. Hopefully you will find truthful people as friends, as a marriage partner. Hashem helps, God helps. Those who really strive for the truth will find the truth. So these are just some ideas of how to go about making a change, how to go about refining one's character, and how to stay safe from being contaminated by the outside world. Just to finish up, I want to remind you something that is very, very obvious to all of us. Every human being wants shelter, a roof over his head, right? To protect him from the elements, rain and wind. I don't think it's necessary to tell someone, you know what, you need a roof over your head. I think most people want it, everywhere in the world. We don't have to remind them. People, however, need to be reminded of the importance of a spiritual shelter. And that's what the Mishkan was, the tabernacle, the Bet HaMikdash, the temple. It was a spiritual shelter from the outside world. It reminded us what we need to focus on, what's really valuable in life, this connection with Him. Otherwise, we're going to be lost. This is a very wild world. Many things happen. And as I said earlier, we don't have control over these things. So we need to protect ourselves. We need to have a spiritual shelter that will protect us from all these elements. So what is our spiritual shelter? Today we don't have the temple, but we still have the Torah. For a Jew, the regular commitment to learning Torah is very, very powerful, very helpful. No doubt about it. The Torah, the rabbis tell us, is an antidote, a tavlin, against the evil inclination. It helps him. It will give him strength. But you know what? Even with this antidote, many have failed. Jews have failed. Why? Because the antidote won't help you if you let the eyes stray. If the eyes become contaminated, how will this antidote help you? Imagine somebody who has cancer and he takes medication for it, but he continues to smoke. Just a quick example. I mean, what are you doing? You're defeating the whole purpose. Rabbis call this tovel v'sheretz be'ado. He's going to the mikveh, he's going to immerse himself in waters that will purify him, holding an impure animal, a rat. Let go of that and then immerse yourself. So for us, for the Jewish people, we have this, of course, advantage, but we have to use it right. What about for the non-Jewish individual who really wants to do his best to succeed in life spiritually? Because financially, it all depends on one's mazal, and that's a whole different topic. But what should an individual who does not have Torah do to succeed? He can also succeed. As we mentioned earlier, it depends on how we see life. It depends how we interpret life. This will help us, no doubt about it. But what should he do to avoid being contaminated, because we're talking about the damage that all this contamination is doing to a lot of good people out there. What I recommend is for the non-Jew to be extra vigilant, and be careful with all of these damaging material, all of this damaging content that is out there. Be very careful. Filter what you see, filter what you read. You may not realize it at first, but the more you get into a book or a movie, you get swept away. You may not see the damage in the first movie, but eventually it accumulates. What is a movie? Unless it's a historical documentary, a movie is fake. It's a fantasy. And some of these fake fantasies are full of violence and crime and murder. Is this what you want to see? Many people dream or have nightmares with these kinds of things because this is what they read and saw. It affects the dreams. It maybe elevates your blood pressure too. Maybe, yeah. So be vigilant what you see. Be careful what you read. And definitely be very, very careful with whom you associate, the people you befriend. Because you may be doing everything right, but if your friends are not doing things right, they're a very powerful influence. Here we're talking about the influence of one's environment, the atmosphere in which he lives. It's poisoned. Find some shelter. Move to a better place. And this is not a joke. Life is short. Before you know it, it's gone. And how were the children raised? In what schools did they go? So we need to be aware. These dangers are out there. Don't be so brave. Don't think that you'll survive because you're strong. No, don't take a chance. Rabbis tell us, don't think that you're so smart. You can fall no matter how smart you are. Don't take a chance. Why take a chance? Why take a risk? We know that these are dangerous elements that exist out there. They've always been around. And they will do their best to hurt you. And you may not even know it. So be careful with whom you associate. Be careful with what you read and with what you see. Last but not least, one of my favorite sayings in Portuguese goes as follows: longe dos olhos, perto do coração. What it usually means is far from the eyes, close to the heart. Or as they say, I think in English, absence makes the hearts fonder of each other when you don't see somebody for a while. So that's the simple meaning behind those words. Another idea behind those words is that obviously sometimes people are distant from us, that we don't see them often, but they're close to our heart. That's also true. But I have a third interpretation of my own on this. Far from the eyes is something very important. Try to keep certain things very far from your eyes, because that is the way you will be able to strengthen the bond between you and your friends, between you and your spouse, between you and God. So sometimes, by making sure that our eyes stay far away from certain things, this will be the cure for strengthening the heart, for restoring those feelings of affection and loyalty that we should have, that they have become so immune because the eyes have been exposed to the wrong elements. You want to restore the health of your eyes, of your mind. You want to have the affection, and you want to have the loyalty that you should have to a high degree. Make sure that you keep in mind that sometimes it's good for the eyes to stay far away so that the heart can become closer to those that it's supposed to be close to. My prayer and wish is, of course, that Yehi Ratzon, that all of us should gain greater clarity as to what is important in life, so that B'ezrat Hashem, we can gain greater control of our life.
Amen.